It's all quiet in the underground bunker. Doors closed, locks bolted. But the Great One isn't just resting on his laurels. He's making sure your weekend is even better by giving you his best. This is the best of Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. America. It's a great evening. We have our wonderful president with us, President Donald J. Trump. Mr. President, how are you today, sir?
I'm very good. Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you. It's
a great honor to have you here, as you know. And you're very, very busy. First of all, I don't know where you get all this energy, but you're very busy. It's an amazing thing. I'm serious about this, though. You wake up in the morning, you say, there's things to do. I'm president for a short period of time, and I'm going to do them. I'm going to take on the hardest things in the world and do them. Is that your mentality?
Well, even in the campaign, I campaigned. It was 120 days out. And I said, you know what? Every day. And I went every day. I didn't do anything. I didn't do golf. I didn't do sports. I didn't do anything. All I did was work. And I did 7 days a week. And I did, many rallies, oftentimes 2 or 3 a day, toward the end at least. And it was amazing. And I noticed that my opponent, Kamala, who you have great respect for, I know you think she's fantastic, would have been a fantastic president. Yes. But Kamala should put out her sheet. They put it out once a week, and it would be like she's off 3-4 days, or she was taking these huge chunks of time and not doing anything. And I said, you're going for the presidency of the United States. They would call that the gold ring, right? And you got 120 days. I would think every single day you have to be on. And she didn't do Joe Rogan. She didn't do a lot of the shows she could have done. And I don't know if she did you, but I tend to doubt it. But nope. Certainly she should have done. But she didn't do a lot of things, and she had a lot of time off. And I said, when you have this one shot at something, you have to do it. And I worked. I don't think I've ever worked certainly more consistently than that. And it's just a carryover. We're doing a lot of great things. I think our country right now, we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. They told me yesterday in the Oval Office, Mark, they were in, as you know, the really great leaders of great countries, very substantial countries, great countries, rich countries. They said the United States is the hottest country in the world right now. And everybody says essentially in the same pretty similar terms that a year ago our country was dead, and now you've got the hottest country in the world. And we are. The United States is the hottest country anywhere in the world right now.
Yeah, it is, and you've done that because clearly it was one of the coldest countries when Biden was president. Let me ask you a question.
It was cold, that's right.
You've got a lot of balls in the air with this Russia and Ukraine thing. You've got NATO, you got these NATO countries, you've got our national security interests, you've got Russia and Ukraine, their interests, and so forth and so on. Is there a method to this? In other words, you talk to the two main people first. Then you talk to NATO. Is there a process here, or you just kind of go with the flow?
Well, it's probably instinct more than process. I have instincts, and I've lived with my instinct about things. Even running for president, I had an instinct I'd win the first time, and I did even better the second time. As you know, I did much better. Yeah. But bad things happened. You covered probably better than anybody. Yeah. It was a disgrace. But now I'm here, and a lot of big things are being found out about the election process from the first time and the second time, with all of the Comey stuff and all of the horrible things with Hillary and everything. And now this term, though, is far more powerful, and I think far more important than the second term could have been. Far more.
All right. So obviously you met with Putin, you met with Zelensky, you met with some of these NATO leaders and so forth. Are you optimistic? I know there's territorial issues, there's security issues, and God knows what else.
Well, you have to be a little bit optimistic. It's complicated. I've settled 6 wars, and a lot of people say 7 because there's one that nobody knows about. But I've settled 6 wars, and we did the Iran wiped out their whole nuclear capability, which they would have used against Israel in 2 seconds if they had the chance. But we wiped it out. Did so many things. But the one that I thought would be the easiest was this one, actually, or one of the easier ones. And, like India and Pakistan, that was getting ready for nuclear weapons. They were shooting down airplanes from each other. And, there was a lot of bad things happening with many of them. Even the Congo, you go to Africa, the Congo and Rwanda, they've been fighting for 31 years. And I got it settled, all settled. They're all happy. Everybody's settled. Nobody's being killed. And it's, a lot of amazing things. You saw the Azerbaijan. That was a big one going on for 34, 35 years with Albania. Think of that. I mean, going on for years. And I got to know the heads, and I got to know them through trade. I was dealing with them a little bit. I said, why are you guys fighting? And then I said, I'm not going to do a trade deal if you guys are going to fight. It's crazy. Anyway, one thing led to another, and I got that one settled. And that was one that people said you couldn't settle it. Even when I had them both in the Oval Office at the end when they were getting ready to sign, they were sitting next to each other. And they were trying to get away. They didn't feel good. By the end of an hour, they were hugging each other and congratulating each other. It was beautiful to watch, actually. But I've done all of them, and it's nobody's ever done anything like that in 6 months, or in a whole lifetime, or frankly, in 8 years, nobody's ever done. And most presidents never did one. Stopping 6 wars and doing all of the other things. We have the greatest economy right now. We have an unbelievable economy, But I like doing it. I like doing it. I love stopping the wars. I thought, though, that this one, because I actually had a good relationship with President Putin the first term, and despite the fact that we had Russia, don't forget, that's not easy to overcome when he sees these whack jobs. And he knew it was false because he wasn't involved. Not to say he's an angel, by the way, but he knew it was all a made-up thing, and, he probably thought we were totally crazy, this country. And we were. It was a very corrupt, bad situation. And actually put us in danger. If he and I didn't understand each other, it would have actually had us. We would have actually been in danger as a country.
Mm-hmm. Now, we've heard talk about security arrangements where the Europeans would lead the way. And also territorial concessions. We don't really know what that means yet.
Right.
Obviously, you know things, and it'd be foolish to reveal all this stuff. But in terms of security, they're really capable of the Europeans helping secure Ukraine because you have them beefing up their military. They can buy some of the best weapons on the face of the earth from us. Is that what you have in mind?
Well, they can. And, Biden spent $350 billion, it looks like, okay? Much more than $300 billion. Can you believe this? Mm-hmm. And spent all of that money, much of it in cash, much of it in weapons, but bought them tremendous amount. It cost the United States a fortune. And we have an ocean in between. We shouldn't have been much involved. If we could solve a war, it's great. They lose 5,000 to 7,000 people a week. And if I can do that for any country, I'd love to do that. I don't care if there's an ocean or no ocean between us. But in our case, there's an ocean in between. So Europe spent $100 billion, and that's a lot of money, but it's not $350 billion. And I was complaining about this for you. One of the reasons I ran, I said, this guy, why is he doing this? Look, he was grossly incompetent. He was incompetent 40 years ago, too. He didn't change so much. But he was really bad, and he spent $350 billion. I said, we're not going to do that. So the first thing I did is I got a rare earth deal from them, and that was worth more than the $350. Mm-hmm. So I felt at least better for the American taxpayer. And then most recently, I did what I did. I made a deal with NATO that NATO will buy the missiles and buy the weapons and buy everything else. It'll all go through NATO. They'll pay us. And we're not spending any money on the deal. People are amazed, actually, but we're not spending any money. Biden used to give away $60-70 billion every time the president would come here. As you know, President Zelensky would come in and he'd say, this and that, and Biden would give him 60, 70, maybe even $100 billion. And you are a man that works hard for your money when you hear $100 billion, not $100 million. That's a lot, Mark, right? $100 billion with a B. And I don't blame Zelensky if you can do that. You're P.T. Barnum, the greatest salesman on earth, the the greatest show on earth, right? But he got it. And to a point where we, are probably at that $350 billion mark. Nobody can even explain. Nobody even knows. If you say, give me a reconciliation, I want to see exactly. They don't even know where to start. The whole thing is ridiculous. But more importantly, the death being caused over there is incredible. So we're going to try and stop it, and I think we have a good shot. I had a very successful meeting with President Putin. I had a very successful meeting with President Zelensky, and now I thought it would be better if they met without me, just to see. I want to see what goes on. They had a hard relationship, very bad relationship, and now we'll see how they do. And if necessary, and it probably would be, but if necessary, I'll go and I'll probably be able to get it closed. I just want to see what happens at the meeting. So they're in the process of setting it up, and we're going to see what happens. But you got to stop the killing, Mark. It's too much killing. I don't care. You don't have to be. We're not. Again, nobody from America is being killed. We're not being killed. The United States soldiers aren't involved. We're not. We have no boots on the ground. But when you lose 6,000, 5,000, 7,000 young people, and then you also lose some people from the towns and cities as missiles get lobbed into them. Can you imagine living like that, where you have no idea whether or not your building's going to collapse on top of you? And that's where it is. And we have a shot, and I think I should do that. But it's when you do 6 of them, and they never even talk about that. You're the only one that mentions it. And these are 6 big ones. These are not these. And these fights were rampant. They were going. And how about Thailand and Cambodia? I mean, these were serious wars. That was just starting, but a lot of people were killed on the border. And I was talking to one of them, and I said, "What are you doing with the war?" He said, "Yes, I am. I am starting. We will have war." I said, "How long have you been fighting?" 500 years. I said, "That's a long time." But they've been fighting on and off. I said, when I heard 500 years, that was a little disconcerting. I said, that's a long time. But they've been fighting 500, over the years. Over years and years, they fight. They fight, then they go back to what they do, then they fight. And I was able to stop it. And not only able to stop it, the 2 gentlemen got to be very friendly in the list. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen, but I stopped the war. So in theory, they should talk about those things, but nobody ever talks. You're the only one that talks about them. And these were serious. Look, India and Pakistan, 6 planes were shot down, and it was getting worse and worse. You saw that. And those are 2 nuclear places. Serbia and Kosovo is another one. I mean, that was going to be a disaster, and I stopped it. And there's one other one that I can't talk about that I stopped before it got started, and it's an honor to do it. You know how many people I saved? I saved like hundreds of thousands and even millions of people. That's the good feeling.
Now, let me ask you this, because I posted on this. When you look at Russia and Ukraine, Russia has been very aggressive towards Ukraine, Georgia, took the Crimea and so forth under Democrat and Republican presidents that preceded you.
Yeah.
And they invaded when you left office and Biden came in. It's like they waited. There's Biden, right. And then they moved.
They would have never done it with me, yeah.
And they never did. They didn't even think about it.
Putin said we wouldn't have done it if Trump were president. He made a strong statement the other. I didn't ask him to say it. He said this would have never happened. It really started with Obama because Obama gave away Crimea.
Right.
And Crimea was the heart and soul of that country. It's beautiful. It's, this massive piece of land stuck out right in the ocean, right in the
Black
Sea. So beautiful. I mean, it's so beautiful. And Obama said, you give it up to Russia. Then they say they like to say, that's just a soundbite, it's a standard. Trump was weak on Russia. I'm the one that stopped the pipeline, Nord Stream 2. They never even heard of Nord Stream 2. I'm the one that gave them javelins. Obama gave him sheets and I gave him javelins. Then they say Trump was weak. These people are con artists, and Putin will tell you that. Putin said, I'd hate to see if you were weak, I'd hate to see you if you were strong because you have been brutal. But But, I get along with Putin, and that's a good thing. It's two nuclear powers. It's always good to get along, right?
Well, apparently Hillary got along with Putin in her own strange way, trying to turn all that against you. Let me ask you this. I think this is probably why, look, I have no inside information. It's probably why Zelensky's nervous. He looks back and he says, okay, the only guy that stops these people is Trump. Now, what the hell are we going to do when Trump's gone? I'm supposed to rely on some Democrat or some weak Republican, so that's probably gone through his head, don't you think?
It could be. It could be. But I'll tell you what, when Barack Hussein Obama gave away, he told them, you just give it up. There's not going to be any fighting. In other words, the United States wasn't going to be backing you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they gave it up. And the guy that gave it up is perhaps questionable, too. But they gave it up to Russia. Think of that. Mm-hmm. So they gave it up to Russia, and that was really the beginning of a disastrous long period for that country. That was the beginning, and nobody talks about that. If I gave up that land, I'd be on the front page of every paper for the next 20 years. When Obama gave it up, they don't even talk about it. Can you imagine? And then they talk about Donald Trump is friendly with Putin. I didn't give him Crimea. Crimea is massive. I would say like the size of Texas or something, in the middle of the ocean. It's gorgeous. And they gave it up because of Obama, and the press doesn't even talk about it.
Well, they don't talk about part of Georgia was taken under Republican president. They don't talk about a lot.
Bush.
But nothing was taken under you, was it?
No. They took the whole thing, the way I look at it, if I didn't come along. They took the whole thing under Biden. They took Crimea under Obama. And they took a big chunk of Georgia under Bush.
Right.
But with me, what was taken? Nothing was taken. Nothing. I came in. This thing was raging. I think it was heading to World War III. And you're not going to have that anymore. That's the nice part. You're not going to have to worry about that. But we'll see what happens in terms of getting it settled. But this was heading to World War III. This is the worst thing that's happened in terms of war. These are the biggest numbers that we've had since World War II.
Mm-hmm. And we have a ton of time left, but I wanted to ask you about this. Qatar and Egypt say, we think we have a ceasefire with Hamas. The American people watch this over and over and over again. You had Witkoff there. You've been involved. Everybody's trying to get Hamas to give them. And what is it? We'll give them half the hostages. I think probably people have had enough of this, don't you?
Well, you saw my statement a few days ago.
I sure did.
So, first of all, they weren't going to give back any hostages. I'm the one that got all the hostages back. By the way, Steve Witkoff does a great job. It's, a very hard job, but I used him because he's a very wonderful person that everybody likes, and he's a good deal maker, and he's done a great job. But, these people also change their minds. So what happened is, we worked hard. We got all these hostages back. I've had so many letters from parents and from the kids themselves and the people that got out. But I got them back, Mark. You wouldn't have even had any. You wouldn't have gotten any. And none of these people would have been back. But I got them back, worked with your friend Bibi. He's a good man. He's in there fighting. He's fighting. They're trying to put him in jail on top of everything else. How about that? He's
nuts.
He's a war hero. Because we work together. He's a war hero. I guess I am, too.
Yep.
Nobody cares, but I am, too. I mean, I sent those planes. 22 years, the pilots came. I rewarded them. I brought them all to the Oval Office, the people having to do with that whole operation, which was so perfect, which was a total obliteration. When CNN, they tried to say, well, maybe it wasn't as good as Trump said it was. It's just such bad people. It turned out that it was even more so than I said. It was obliteration. The Atomic Energy Commission said, this place is gone. They can maybe start up, but they're not starting up there. These guys, and you know what that is? That's sort of a hurting of our pilots. But when you look at it, when you look at what we've done and the success that we've had, and, they're putting Bibi through a lot. But as far as Hamas is concerned, I said 2 weeks ago, and I said it a long time ago, you won't, ultimately, you're going to have to fight like hell. Everyone's forgotten about October 7th. They don't like to think about October 7th. You have some people, I guess it's a soundbite, pretty much a Democrat soundbite. It's amazing that Democrats, like Schumer's a Palestinian. He's right now a Palestinian senator. We call him the Palestinian senator from New York City or New York, but I don't know. I think his career is probably over. I guess I see polls where he gets obliterated, just like we obliterated the nuclear weapons, the nuclear stockpile. That would have been, by the way, I think they would have had nuclear weapons in a period of 4 weeks.
Oh, you're right.
I was going to say the pilots came to the Oval Office and they said, "Sir, our predecessors and us have been practicing this flight for 22 years. The same flight, right to the same place where they stored the stuff. They've been practicing it. You're the only president that had the guts to let us go do it. And if we didn't do it, they would probably by this time, just about this time, have a nuclear weapon. And they would have used it. You know that."
Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. President, we're running out of time. I just want to tell you, this audience loves you. This audience backs you.
Well, we don't
give a damn what the media have to say. They're wrong about everything, and they're on the wrong side of history, too. So we want to wish you all the best in your dealings here. These are tough with Russia and Ukraine. Thank you for what you're doing with the border and the economy. Thank you for what you're doing really for Israel, quite frankly, and your support of the state of Israel. There's a lot of Israel hatred and anti-Semitism and all the rest of this stuff swirling around, and you stand there and you fight it. So God bless you, my friend, and you are my friend.
We are, but so do you fight it. Nobody like you. And you and Sean and a few people, it's not a huge group of people because it seems to be heading in the wrong direction in many ways. But in the end, we win. We win all the time. But I just want to thank you, too.
And the best of the First Lady. That was a beautiful letter. God bless you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
All right. What a man. Just fantastic.
Mark Levin. Making your weekend even better. This is the best of Mark Levin.
I want to give you an idea of how our media are so corrupt, so left-wing, how they really want to sabotage our country. Susan Rice was on MSLSD yesterday, and they don't even call it that anymore. It's MS Now. It should be called BS Now, don't you think, Mr. Producer? But anyway, there it is. In fact, that'll be the name I give it from now on, BS Now. And she talks about the Trump-Putin summit. We don't really know what happened there, as I commented on Sunday. But let's listen to this. You heard the president. About an hour ago, we're going to release that audio, the recording of it shortly, and post it for you. And but I want you to listen to Susan Rice, who's a disaster, who's up to her eyeballs in Obamagate. That is the Russia collusion phony story. She went on TV and lied on 5 different networks about Benghazi. You remember her. She's a radical kook. She's a political bomb thrower. And so, of course, BS Now, that's one of the great guests that they figure they have to have. Cut 4, go.
Trump quickly ascertained that he wasn't going to get a ceasefire out of Putin. And Trump always likes to put a positive spin on his own work and even a dishonest spin in some instances. Frequently. And so I think that, he had said for weeks, if not months, that a ceasefire immediately was necessary and that was what he sought in Alaska. And if he didn't get it, he was going to be very angry and there were going to be severe consequences. And he melted in like a puddle of ice in the Alaska sunshine.
All right, hold on a second. He melted like a puddle of ice. Have you ever seen a puddle of ice, Mr. Producer? Ice can melt into a puddle, right? But I've never heard of a puddle of ice. Now, maybe that's her brain she's trying to describe. But Trump is flexible. It's not disingenuous. It's not a failure. He saw an opportunity for a bigger deal. That's what he did. So rather than fight over a ceasefire, and that's the ploy all the time, he says, all right, let's go for the whole enchilada. And he contacts, after speaking to Putin, he contacts Zelensky. Have you heard Zelensky complain at this point? Early on, he was concerned about it. He hasn't complained since. The European countries haven't complained since. The only one complaining are the Democrats. The Democrats who do nothing. Nothing. Except create havoc, create anarchy, create chaos. They do nothing. Nothing good. I think it was Trump or one of his spokespeople who said if he walked out of there with a deal that Russia would surrender Moscow to NATO, they'd complain about that. But her hero, Obama, Crimea was lost under him. And he didn't say a damn thing. He didn't say a damn thing. Go ahead, please.
I don't know if Putin just refused or if he manipulated him in some way.
So why are you a guest? You don't actually know anything. You're a guest because you're a hater. You're a guest because you're evil. You're a guest because you're on the attack. You have a title. You had one under Biden like you had one under Obama. Your reputation is thoroughly in shreds, except with the media and the Democrats. Doesn't matter what you do and how wrong you've been throughout your life. But she's sure that whatever Trump did, he cowered. He ducked. He flinched. And there he is. Meeting with Zelensky and all these heads of the European countries, talking about a security, a border potentially, if it involves territory. Wouldn't it be great if I could bring Susan Rice back and question her about what she said on BS Now? Go ahead.
Trump, as some people say, responds to the last person he spoke to. I don't know.
How is this contributing any knowledge to anybody or anything? It's not. It's poison. I'll prove it to you. She goes on. Cut five, Mr. Producer. Go.
It's been clearly and repeatedly established, including by the bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee led by Marco Rubio, that Russia interfered in the 2016 election by disinformation campaigns, by social media efforts, by all sorts of means.
So ignore all the evidence, the firsthand hard evidence that has been with the government, including during the Biden regime. Nobody said that the Russians didn't attempt to interfere with the election. Nobody has said that. Tulsi Gabbard hasn't said that. Nobody. What they're saying is Russia's interference had no impact and that Russia did not interfere on behalf of Trump. See, those are the two lies. Number one, that the interference had an impact on the election and elected Donald Trump. And number two, that the interference was done on behalf of Donald Trump and he was colluding with the Russians. It's all a lie, an absolute lie. But again, she's on BS Now, a.k.a. MSLSD, and this is the best she's got. But this is how they pick their guests. Little propagandists. Go ahead.
Actual vote. And that's just a fact. Now, obviously, Donald Trump doesn't like that fact. He doesn't like the fact that the intelligence community and the Senate Bipartisan Intelligence Committee assessed
the Senate Bipartisan Intelligence Committee didn't even have the information that was released. Did it? No, it didn't. The Senate Bipartisan Committee. It's also funny how she doesn't mention the House Intelligence Committee, which did a far better job than the Senate Bipartisan Committee, by the way. And part of the problem is, quote-unquote, bipartisan. A lot of the Republicans sell out to the Democrats. That said, her findings are wrong. Her statement of the findings are wrong. But let's say they're right. It's funny how she won't talk about the documentation that was released by Gabbard, and then Radcliffe, and then Patel, which is overwhelming. All of it. Funny, isn't it? And funny how she isn't pressed about her role. Man, do you know if I had 5 minutes questioning her, Mr. Producer, what that would look like? Go ahead.
Was intended to not only sow distrust in our democracy, but to benefit Donald Trump. But all of that really
That's a lie. It was not intended to benefit Donald Trump. An absolute lie. Look at today. Who do you think the Russians would want as president today? Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump? Hillary Clinton. Go ahead.
In 2025, And Donald Trump professes to be committed to trying to bring peace to Ukraine in the wake of Russia's brutal, years-long invasion. And rather than put the sort of pressure...
Brutal, years-long invasion that happened under his predecessors and really happened under Biden, for whom you worked, for whom you were a senior advisor. You, Susan Rice, have your DNA all over this, blood all over your hands as a participant in this. You. This didn't happen under Donald Trump. It happened 3.5 years ago, February 2022, when you occupied the White House, when your regime occupied the White House. Biden, Harris, genius foreign policies, funding the Iranians as they're building nuclear weapons. Hamas, attacks again during their presidency, during their regime. They undermined Netanyahu. They undermined the state of Israel. They claim they kept giving arms to Zelensky. That's all well and good. But Trump's point is, Putin invaded on your watch because of what you showed in Afghanistan, because of the statements coming out of Biden's mouth. And this is what I mean. Trump's just getting started on this peace initiative. Look how far he's come. Friday, then over the weekend, today. And it's a process. It takes time. And yet look how fast this thing has moved. And I've been thinking about this. There can't be a bad deal. Not if Zelensky has to sign off and these European leaders have to sign off. They're not going to sign off on a bad deal. It might be a tough deal, but it's not going to be a bad deal.
Mark Levin. You're listening to the best of Mark Levin.
Joy Reid wants to teach some black history, but she's a liar. She doesn't want to teach black history. About 20 years after Roosevelt's death, as I write on page 51 of The Democrat Party Hates America, this is a killer book, by the way. And less than 60 years ago, the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which essentially outlawed Jim Crow segregation and discrimination based on race, color, sex, religion, and national origin. And I was wrong. It's worse. Was opposed by 69% of Senate Democrats. Opposed by 69% of Senate Democrats. Supported by 82% of Senate Republicans. It was opposed by 61% of House Democrats. It was supported by 80% of House Republicans. Got that? Of those who voted no in the House, 74% were Democrats. Of those who voted no in the Senate, 78% were Democrats. It's important to remember these things. Now, they say Barry Goldwater, who opposed these laws on federalism grounds, obviously he was a racist. He wasn't really arguing on federalist grounds, now was he? The opposition among elected Republicans to the 64 Civil Rights Act was small and insignificant. And those Republicans who opposed it, including Senator Barry Goldwater, mostly did so not for racist beliefs, but reasons related to federalism, that is, the sorting out of which level of government had the authority to act. Obviously, they were wrong. That said, Goldwater supported the 1957 and 1960 Civil Rights Acts. Even Wikipedia, whose co-founder says it is now propaganda for the left-leaning establishment, acknowledged the following about Barry Goldwater. Quote, Barry Goldwater was fundamentally a staunch supporter of racial equality. Goldwater integrated his family's business upon taking over control in the 1930s. A lifetime member of the NAACP, Goldwater helped found the group's Arizona chapter. Goldwater saw to it that the Arizona Air National Guard was racially integrated from its inception in 1946, 2 years before President Truman ordered the military as a whole to be integrated a process that was not completed until 1954. Goldwater worked with Phoenix civil rights leaders to successfully integrate public schools a year prior to the Brown versus Board of Education decision. Wikipedia continues praising Goldwater, quote, Goldwater was an early member and largely unrecognized supporter of the National Urban League Phoenix chapter, going so far as to cover the group's early operating deficits with his personal funds. Though the NAACP denounced Goldwater in the harshest of terms when he ran for president, the Urban League conferred on Goldwater the 1991 Humanitarian Award for, quote, 50 years of loyal service to the Phoenix Urban League. In response to the League members who objected, citing Goldwater's vote on the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Urban League president pointed out that Goldwater had saved the League more than once, saying he preferred to judge a person on the basis of his daily actions rather than on his voting record. It's noteworthy that the Civil Rights Acts of 1875, 1857, 1960, 1964, and 1965 were overwhelmingly supported by Republicans. In 1982, it was Reagan who signed a 25-year extension of the Voting Rights Act, the longest extension by far at that time. And in 1983, it was Reagan who signed into law the designation of Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday as a national holiday. As for Lyndon Johnson, the truth is that he had less of an epiphany than a slap of political reality, realizing that most of the nation had already rejected the Southern Democrat segregationists, and it was in his political interest to do so as well. And the Democrat Party's institutional racism extended well into the 1970s. President Joe Biden, who Joy Reid supported. President Joe Biden, who many blacks who come on this show and announce from their own platforms that they backed Biden over Trump as they did Harris over Trump. Do they know what they were backing? Biden in the early to mid-70s as a senator had a close relationship with several of the Senate's most notorious racists and segregationists, about which he brags to this day, including Mississippi Senator James Eastland, who fought hard against the Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 65. Biden worked closely with Eastland, among others, to thwart public school integration. 1977, he declared, unless there is orderly integration, I'm quoting, my children are going to grow up in a jungle, the jungle being a racial jungle. Now, you heard that during the election, thanks to me. I put it in the book. When campaigning in the South for Democrat Party presidential nominees, several decades ago, Biden often touted the praise he received from Alabama Democratic Governor George Wallace, another leading racist segregationist, as, quote, one of the outstanding young politicians of America. Biden knew who and what he was dealing with, yet he was comfortable embracing it. Moreover, Biden had a long history of racist and stereotypical remarks about blacks and other minorities, which he openly and repeatedly voiced to this day. Now, in 2022, he chose Ketanji Brown Jackson for the Supreme Court. And Biden said, for too long, our government, our courts, have not looked like America. And I believe it's time that we have a court that reflects the full talents and greatness of our nation with a nominee of extraordinary qualifications, and that we inspire all young people to believe that they can one day serve their country at the highest level. Is that where it ends? No. But Biden did not feel that way in 2003 when President George W. Bush nominated Judge Rogers Brown, a black woman, to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. Our friend Mark Thiessen at Fox, he wrote in the Washington Post the following, quote, Biden wants credit for nominating the first black woman to the Supreme Court. But here's the shameful irony. As a senator, he warned President Bush that if he nominated the first black woman to serve in the Supreme Court, I'm quoting, he would filibuster and kill her nomination. Now, Judge Brown is the granddaughter, she's on the court today, the circuit court, is the granddaughter of sharecroppers. Grew up in rural Alabama during the dark days of segregation. when her family refused to enter restaurants or theaters with separate entrances for black customers. She rose from poverty, put herself through college and UCLA Law School as a working single mother. She was a self-made African-American legal star, but she was an outspoken conservative, so Biden set out to destroy her. Thiessen points out that what Biden threatened was unprecedented. There's never been a successful filibuster of a nominee for associate justice in the history of the Republic. Biden wanted to make a black woman the first in history to have her nomination killed by filibuster. And Biden fought like a rabid dog to block Brown's nomination, though she was confirmed later, because he knew Brown would be in line to become the first black woman on the Supreme Court. And he didn't want such a historic appointment conferred on a Republican, and he didn't want the Republican Party to receive credit for making it. Does Joy Brown want this history in the Smithsonian? Ladies and gentlemen, shouldn't this book be in the Smithsonian? The Democrat Party hates America? These are facts. This is history with specific citations. The history that they have squelched, that they've hidden, that they've smothered with a pillow. It's not in every instance, but it's in most instances. When you're talking about slavery or racism or Jim Crow or the rest, it's one party with some elements of the Republican Party, but never the vast majority of the Republican Party. But racism is the history of the Republican Party. Anti-Semitism is racism is the history of the Democrat Party. Anti-Semitism is the history of the Democrat Party. It's the truth. It's the truth. Now let's listen to Joy Reid from the top, Mr. Producer. Cut 15, go.
They can't fix the history they did. Their ancestors made this country into a slave hell. But they can clean it up now because they got the Smithsonian. They can get rid of all the slavery stuff. They got PragerU. They can lie about the history to the children. They can't.
You're disgusting to me. You are disgusting to me. Nobody's lying about slavery in this country. The lie is the political party, and it wasn't just a political party, but the political party that fought a civil war to defend it. And then after the Civil War was lost, that promoted what became the Ku Klux Klan. Another Republican president, Ulysses S. Grant, who despised slavery and racism, sent the United States Army into the South to destroy the Klan. And did a great job of it until the Democrats took the House of Representatives when he was president. And they cut off all the funding for the Army to take out the Klan. I am more than prepared to go toe-to-toe with anybody on this. And I bet you Joy Reid's a Democrat. Well, we're not that way anymore. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. With a political party with that kind of history, how could you be a member of it? That's the history. That's the history. She's attacking Prager University. Has anybody heard Dennis Prager on the radio lately, Mr. Producer? No. Does anybody care what's happened to Dennis Prager? Dennis Prager has had a near-fatal accident. He can't speak behind a microphone right now. Maybe never. Dennis Prager is a great man. He studied to be a rabbi. What makes him great is his ability to communicate about America's morality and values and belief systems. But he can't communicate right now. See, Joy Reid, it's not all about skin color. It's about what's in your heart and soul. You have no heart and soul. You're a vile, evil person. And don't give a damn what color you are or what your genitalia is. You couldn't even make it at MSNBC.
Mark Levin.
The Great One makes your weekend even better. This is the best of Mark Levin.
By the way, word is Putin's playing games again. He's up to no good. He's throwing out impossible obstacles to securing Ukraine. He's demanding that Russia and or China be part of the security forces for Ukraine. You imagine that, Mr. Producer? Oh, jeez. What a moron. His territorial demands are severe and all the rest. In the end, as I've said from day one, the United States, we, President Trump, really have all the cards. And what do I mean by that? The sales of really top-notch military equipment to NATO, which in turn they can provide to Ukraine. That's number one. Number two, tariffs on China and India to choke off their supply of liquidity, that is cash for oil. And number three, a second level of severe sanctions that hit Russia's banks. Its access to cash can drive that dictatorship into the dirt the way Reagan did Gorbachev and the old Soviet Union. Except Putin's in worse position than the old Soviet Union. So we'll see how this turns out. President Trump's doing everything humanly possible to make it right. We'll see how it turns out. And but for President Trump, Russia might already be bleeding from this. So we'll see. We shall see. It's the right man in the right place in Donald Trump. And I'm going to get to this sentence or two or three that is being used by the media to attack the president, where he said, I might be a hero too, a war hero too. And they're all worked up about it. They didn't run with any of the rest of what the president said, of course. But I want to make the case that he's exactly right. Now, this guy who writes for the New York Post, one of my favorite newspapers, he used to write at National Review. He's supposed to be a conservative. And he's been hired by Mediaite, and his name is Isaac Shore. Isaac Shore is whoring himself out to Mediaite. He, among others, apparently has the Levin portfolio. So whenever I post something, on social media or say something, they have him comment on it, and of course, it's always detrimental. I have a long memory. Guys like this who whore themselves out to the left, they don't last, they don't do very well, and usually they turn on conservatives. That's what they do. People like Michael Steele or Bill Kristol or Tucker Carlson or people like that. Eventually they turn on red-blooded Americans. So I've seen them come and I've seen them go. But that's not what I want to focus on, America. I want to focus on an unbelievable story in the New York Slimes. That's right, you heard me. The New York Slimes. Now, after I read this to you, and it's going to take a little while over a few segments, but you're going to want to hear it, I'm sure, because almost none of us subscribe to the New York Slimes. Why should we? Then I want to tell you why they're publishing it. By Shane Goldmasher with Jonah Smith, whatever that means. Jonah Smith is a data journalist focused on voter registration election turnout data, they told us. Shane Goldmasher is a national political correspondent covering the rebuilding efforts of the Democratic Party, as they put it. Now, they will use the word Democratic Party. I will use the word Democrat Party. There is nothing democratic about the Democratic Party. The Democrat Party, they write, is hemorrhaging voters long before they even go to the polls. Of the 30 states that track voter registration by political party, Democrats lost ground to Republicans at every single one between 2020 and 2024 elections, and often by a lot. Now, that's only 30 states, so it's even worse. That 4-year swing toward the Republicans adds up to 4.5 million voters. A deep political hole that could take years for Democrats to climb out from. The sentence should be to climb out from under, but nonetheless. The stampede away from the Democratic Party, as they put it, is occurring in battleground states, the bluest states, and the reddest states, too, according to a new analysis of voter registration data by the New York Times, so in every state. The analysis used voter registration data compiled by L2, a nonpartisan data firm. Few measures reflect the luster of a political party's brand more clearly than the choice by voters to identify with it, whether they register on a clipboard in a supermarket parking lot, at the Department of Motor Vehicles, or in the comfort of their own home. And fewer Americans are choosing to be Democrats. In fact, for the first time since 2018, more new voters nationwide chose to be Republicans than Democrats last year. All told, Democrats lost about 2.1 million registered voters during the 2020 and 2024 elections in these 30 states. So it's even worse, right? Because they're not counting the other 20 because they don't have the data. Along with Washington, D.C., that allowed people to register with a political party. In the remaining 20 states, voters do not register with a political party. Republicans gained 2.4 million in those 30 states. There are still more Democrats registered nationwide than Republicans, partly because of blue states like California allow people to register by party, while red states like Texas do not. But the trajectory is troublesome for Democrats, and there are growing tensions over what to do about it. Democrats went from nearly an 11 percentage point edge over Republicans on Election Day 2020 in those places with partisan registration to just over 6% in 2024. The swing helps to explain President Trump's success last year when he won the popular vote for the first time, swept the swing states, and roared back to the White House. And I'll keep something else in mind, folks. We've talked about this. The census was wrong. Republican states like Texas, Florida, Tennessee were ripped off in the census. So there should be more Republicans in the House of Representatives today, just based on the mathematics. That's number one. Number two, President Trump won a bigger electoral college victory than has been reported to him as a result of that as well. Let's keep going. Quote, the death cycle of the Democratic Party, but there seems to be no end to this, said Michael Bruce Prusser, who tracks voter registration closely as the director of data science for Decision Desk Headquarters, an election analysis site. There is no silver lining or cavalry coming across the hill. This month after month, year after year. The shifts also previewed Democrats' weakness in 2024. The party saw some of its steepest declines in registration among men and younger voters, the Times analysis found, two constituents that swung sharply toward Mr. Trump. All four presidential battleground states covered by the Times analysis, Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, showed significant Democrat erosion. In North Carolina, Republicans erased roughly 95% of the registration advantage that Democrats held in the fall of 2020, according to state records as of this summer. In Nevada, Democrats suffered the steepest percentage point plunge of any state but West Virginia between 2020 and 2024. The share of voters choosing to register with either party went down after the state adopted an automatic voter registration system, but the Democrat decline allowed Republicans to briefly surpass Democrats earlier this year. Now, for many years, more and more voters have been registering as independents or unaffiliated, sapping both parties' roles. More recently, however, that growth has come mostly at the expense of the Democrat Party. Democratic strategists say the party's nationwide registration decline is hidden in plain sight crisis that must be reversed before the 2028 election. Consider this. In 2018, Democrats accounted for 34% of new voter registrations nationwide, with Republicans only 20%. By 2024, 6 years later, Republicans had overtaken Democrats among new registrants. In 6 years, the GOP share rose by 9 percentage points. The Democratic share dropped by 8. The Times compiled registration data from 1.2, compared it to state data, from L2, compared it to state records across the country to show the scope of the registration decline for Democrats, and interviewed more than 24 party strategists, officials involved in registration efforts. Quote, "We fell asleep at the switch," said Maria Cardona, a veteran party strategist and longtime member of the DNC. But Democrats are divided and flummoxed over what to do. For years, the left has relied on a sprawling network of nonprofits, which solicit donations from people whose identities they need not disclose, to register Black, Latino, and younger voters. It's an amazing story. Though the groups are technically nonpartisan, the underlying assumption has been that most new voters registering would vote Democrat. Mr. Trump upended that calculation with the inroads he made with working-class non-white voters. Quote, "You can't just register a young Latino or a young Black voter and assume they're going to know that it's Democrats that have the best politics," Ms. Cardona said. Behind the scenes, a fierce fight is underway over how Democrats should address their sagging voter registration numbers and which groups should receive funding to do the work. It's a battle with hundreds of millions of dollars at stake, pitting partisans against philanthropists and some of the Democrats' most important constituents against one another. You know, in a strange way, this was bound to happen because the Democrat Party is a cobbling together of disparate groups, ethnic identities, income identities, genitalia identities, and so forth and so on. That's me, not the New York Times saying that, of course. Voter registration is an important barometer of a state's political tilt, even if it doesn't necessarily predict the outcome of the next election. Experts sometimes call it a lagging indicator because people typically stop voting with party years before they formally register with a new one. Kentucky and West Virginia, for example, each flipped to a Republican registration advantage only in recent years, though both states turned red in presidential contests long ago. Tom Bonnier, one of the Democrat Party's leading experts on voter registration trends, spent much of 2024 downplaying the seriousness of his party registration woes. He's now come around. Quote, "I was wrong," he said in an interview. "Clearly, in retrospect, we can say the Democrat Party had dug itself too deep a hole in the preceding 4 years for the Harris campaign to dig itself out in the last few months," added Bonnier, referring to the 2024 bid by Kamala Harris. He now calls the registration figures, quote, "a big flashing red alert," unquote. Grim milestones of Democrat decline have been piling up. Last summer, Bucks County, a competitive Philadelphia suburb, tilted Republican in registration for the first time since 2007, according to state records. In the fall, Mr. Trump became the first Republican presidential candidate to carry the county this century. That's Bucks County. This spring, it was Miami-Dade County in Florida, with a number of active Republican voters in the county zoomed past Democrats just months after Mr. Trump became the first Republican presidential candidate to carry the county in decades. As recently as November 2020, Democrats outnumbered Republicans by 200,000 statewide, a 1.2 million voter flip. A swing flipped Florida into the Republican column by registration, according to the Times analysis of LT's data. North Carolina could be the next battleground state to tip. State records show the Democratic edge there is down to less than 17,000 voters from nearly 400,000 just 4 years ago. And Pennsylvania may be on deck. Democrats held a registration advantage of 517,000 among active voters there in November 2020, according to state records. That edge has dwindled down to 53,000 from 517,000 this summer. The Democrat Party's diminished appeal to men and younger voters was evident in partisan registration data long before it became apparent to everyone in the 2024 election. Not so long ago, in 2018, Democrats had accounted for 66% of new voters under 45 who registered were one of two major parties. Yet by 2024, the Democratic share had plunged to 48%. The Times analysis of LT's data found. In other words, Republicans went from roughly 1/3 of newly registered voters under 45 to a majority in the last 6 years. You know what's annoying and frustrating, though? You have these organizations around. I did that. I'm responsible. No, you didn't. Sit down and shut up.
Mark Levin. We're giving you nothing but the best of Mark Levin.
The Epstein matter. Well, we have the Deputy Attorney General who interviewed Giselle Maxwell. His name is Todd Blanche. We've known him here. We've talked to him on the air. He's a very good lawyer, very loyal to the president, but an excellent lawyer. And he did an interview with her, and that's being released, the audio and the transcript. And we find so far that there was no list, which confirms what the Department of Justice had said, that there is no anything of Trump in any awkward position or doing anything awkward. And her father was not a spy for Israel. Now, I know this is going to burst a lot of balloons. I know it. That is, that Epstein was not a spy for Israel. And, in fact, her father didn't even know Epstein, she points out. But regardless, already, I'm listening and watching, and can't believe any of this. Okay, can't believe any of this. So what are we going to believe? Department of Justice sought to have all the grand jury information released. 3 separate federal judges said, no, we're not going to pierce the secrecy of the grand jury. So no grand jury information, no list, no Trump, no Israel. So what are the kooks going to do? What are the grifters going to do? What's Tucker going to do? What's Rogan going to do? What are they all going to do? They're going to say, I don't believe any of this. It's a massive cover-up. And they'll be doing this day in and day out. But I've said to you folks before, because I want to move on from this, what is the end game here? What is the end game? I don't understand. Do you understand, Mr. Producer? I don't. No, nobody does. There is no end game. And so what happens is these people try to light you up. They just keep trying to light you up. Listen, we're going to complain and attack. Just keep listening, and you keep listening, and there's no end game. There is no end game. Okay, that's my Epstein discussion for the day. Now let's get to a real matter. John Bolton. I want you to listen to what some of the losers have to say, and then I'm going to explain why John Bolton may be in very, very serious trouble. I knew John Bolton a long time, and he lobbied me to help him get the national security position. I wasn't the only one he lobbied. He lobbied other people as well. Of course, in the first term of the Trump presidency. And let's see here if I can find the audio that Mr. Producer sent me so beautifully, and that I printed out, but I can't find. I'll pull it up here in a second, because I want you to hear some of this, because the conspiracy theories come out. Do you realize how much of our day is spent listening to BS and crap? The lies from the media and the conspiracy theories from the podcasters. You realize how much of our time is spent on this stuff? It's really unbelievable. Now, let's start with Senator Chris Coons of Delaware, who covered up for Biden and Biden's mental situation. And so Chris Coons is on the Constipated News Network. He shouldn't be anywhere, because he is not only not reliable, he's a liar. But there he is. He finds all of this so chilling. Cut 3, go.
Well, Kate, the timing of this is chilling. As you said in your introduction, it is court authorized, and it is alleged to be related to a national security investigation.
So why is the timing chilling? Would it be better 3 months from now or 2 months ago? Why is the timing chilling? Why do these fools come onto these shows all prepared with their one-liners and their special words, It's chilling. What's chilling? All of a sudden, they're special pleaders for John Bolton. They used to hate John Bolton when he worked in the Reagan administration, when he worked in the Bush administration, when he was national security advisor to President Trump. As a matter of fact, he couldn't get his UN ambassadorship confirmed. He was a recess appointee for a couple of years. They hated him. Now he's their darling. Go ahead.
But it's important for your viewers to remember the context here. John Bolton served as national security advisor in the first Trump term. After that Trump term, he wrote a book entitled The Room Where It Happened, where he said a lot of unflattering things about Donald Trump, his lack of knowledge about national security, his repeatedly needing to be talked out of withdrawing from NATO. And in particular, and I quote, he said...
Let's stop for a second. Isn't this amazing? Two things right away come to mind, don't they? You're the national security advisor. Why are you writing a book about your boss? Ladies and gentlemen, I served in the Reagan administration for 8 years. I never wrote a book about any of my bosses. But that's totally unethical, but it's not illegal. Now, he talks about how he had to talk Trump out of withdrawing from NATO. Didn't he just say that, Mr. Producer? He sure did. And yet Trump, without John Bolton, has made NATO stronger than ever before. But he had to talk him out of it, don't you know? So that doesn't even make sense to me, what he says in his book there. Anyway, go ahead.
And Trump practiced obstruction of justice as a way of life. In recent days, after the Trump-Putin summit in Alaska, Bolton has been publicly criticizing President Trump, saying that Putin is playing him.
Bolton is always publicly criticizing President Trump. Always. Go ahead.
Doesn't understand the risks of what he's doing in engaging with Putin, and Trump has been firing back. So the timing of this search of Bolton's home is particularly chilling.
See, he's got his whole narrative. There's nothing chilling about the timing of this. Stick with me, because I'm going to explain this whole thing. I'm going to explain this whole thing in ways that nobody is at this point. Okay, let's go to the next. Who's on the next on the list there, Mr. Producer? McCabe. Let's go to McCabe. Now, he shouldn't be on TV at all, should he? Should he? And McCabe may have problems down the road, too. But they bring in these unethical bastards who were caught red-handed in the Russia collusion stuff to comment. I mean, seriously, folks, seriously? Go ahead.
We know that Mr. Bolton has said critical things about the president. That's not illegal. That's not a crime.
Not. And that's right. That's not what he's being investigated for, genius. Is it? Go ahead.
Be pretty squarely within your First Amendment right in this country. And in fact, you shouldn't.
This has nothing to do with the First Amendment, does it? Now, all these people wanted Donald Trump locked up on day one on the documents case. Remember all that stuff, folks? The Espionage Act. Presidential Records Act. And, of course, Donald Trump had been president. And I argue that those laws don't even pertain to a former president. Otherwise, the constitutional construct doesn't work properly. But we made those arguments. I was right. We'll put them aside for now. Bolton has none of those protections. So when it comes to releasing classified information, it has nothing to do with the First Amendment. Period. Did you hear this clown, this McCabe, talk about the First Amendment when it came to Donald Trump? No. Donald Trump was charged with 40 felonies in the so-called documents case. 40 felonies. And he's the ex-president. And it was time to try and interfere with the election. But now we circle the wagons around John Bolton. The timing is chilling. The First Amendment. Wow. Go ahead.
The Department of Justice and the FBI have all kinds of policies absolutely prohibiting investigating people for the exercise of their First Amendment rights. And so if that's what's going on.
Exercised. investigated for exercising his First Amendment rights. Liar, buffoon. Now, who's the so-called journalist here? Kate Bolton. Now, we know Kate from the past. IQ of a glass of water. And a moron. Go ahead.
And there's all kinds of reasons to believe that that might be the true motivation. We know that the president is embarked on a pretty extensive effort to go after his perceived enemies.
First of all, the president's not going after anybody. The Department of Justice is conducting investigations, the FBI. This was a warrant that was issued by a federal court. Think a federal court would issue a warrant if McCabe is right? Of course not. Do you think a federal court would issue a warrant if Chris Coons is right? Of course not. You got to show a judge. It could be a magistrate judge or a straight-up federal judge. You've got to show them that there's probable cause a crime was committed. And then you have to attach evidence. Evidence. In the form of a signed document. Go ahead.
Who's running on retribution.
That's right. I am your retribution. That's what he told his supporters. So there's all kinds of reasons, I think, to look at this with a jaundiced eye and to be aware of the fact that
this guy has said nothing. Go ahead.
Just the probable cause articulated in this search warrant.
So there's got to be more than the probable cause articulated in the search warrant. Got to be more. When this federal court went ahead and issued the warrant, there's got to be more at stake here, where there's got to be more somewhere. Now, ladies and gentlemen, none of this has been released to the public yet. Not even the supporting evidence for the warrant. None of it's been released yet. At some point, it's going to be released. It could be released tomorrow. It could be released next month. I don't have any idea. So none of it's been released, but McCabe knows there's got to be more. There's got to be more here.